This morning we will discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, Divinity and Divine Service, text 7. So I will first recite the Sanskrit and you can repeat if you desire. And then we will hear Srila Prabhupada's translation and purport. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevi Bhagavate Bhakti Yoga Payochita Yanayat Yasivarahyam Jnanam Sayat Ahaitukam. The word for word translation. Vasudeva unto Krishna, Bhagavati unto the personality of Godhead, Bhakti Yoga, contact of devotional service, Payojita, being applied, Sanayati, thus produce, Asu, very soon, Vairagyam, detachment, Jnanam, knowledge, Cha, and Yat, that which are high to come, causeless. Translation and purport by Abhacharya Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of God, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Purport. Those who consider devotional service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna to be something like material emotional affairs may argue that in the revealed scriptures, sacrifice, charity, austerity, knowledge, mystic powers, and similar other processes of transcendental realization are recommended. According to them, bhakti or devotional service of the Lord is meant for those who cannot perform the high-grade activities. Generally, it is said that the bhakti cult is meant for Sudras, Vaishyas, and the less intelligent woman class. But that is not the actual fact. The bhakti cult is the topmost of all transcendental activities, and therefore it is simultaneously sublime and easy. It is sublime for the pure devotees who are serious about getting in contact with the Supreme Lord, and it is easy for the neophytes who are just on the threshold of the house of bhakti. To achieve the contact of the Supreme Personality of God, Sri Krishna, is a great science, and it is open for all living beings, including the Sudras, Vaishyas, women, and even those lower than the low-born Sudras. So what to speak of the high-class men, like the qualified Brahmins and the great self-realized kings. The other high-grade activities designated as sacrifice, charity, austerity, and suffering are all corollary factors following the pure and scientific bhakti cult. The principles of knowledge and attachment are two important factors on the path of transcendental realization. The whole spiritual process leads to perfect knowledge of everything material and spiritual, and the results of such perfect knowledge are that one becomes detached from material affection and become attached to spiritual activities. Becoming detached from material things does not mean becoming inert altogether. As men with a poor fund of knowledge think, nice karma means not undertaking activities that will produce good or bad effects. Negation does not mean negation of the positive. Negation of the non-essentials does not mean negation of the essential. Similarly, the attachment for material forms does not mean nullifying the positive form. The bhakti cult is meant for realization of the positive form. When the positive form is realized, the negative forms are automatically eliminated. Therefore, with the development of the bhakti cult, with the application of positive service to the positive form, one not only becomes detached from inferior things, and he becomes attached to superior things. Similarly, the bhakti cult, being the supremest occupation of the living being, leads him out of material sense gratification. That is a sign of a pure devotee. He is not a fool, nor is he engaged in inferior energies, nor does he have material values. It is not possible by dry reasoning. It actually happens by the grace of the Almighty. In conclusion, one who is a pure devotee has all other good qualities, namely knowledge, detachment, etc. But one who has only knowledge of detachment is not necessarily well acquainted with the principles of bhakti. Bhakti is the supremest occupation of the human being. I repeat the verse again. Vasudeve Bhagavate Bhakti Yoga Prayochita Yanyatya Sivarahyam Jnanam Sayat Ahayatukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge, detachment from the world. Amahyanativanasya Chansa Sanakya Saksuran Miritam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Nama Chitchetayamanopistam Staptam Yena Bhutali Svayam Rupkadamyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandiyam Shiyo Shiyuda Padakamanam Shiyom Vaishnavam Sa Shiyupam Jagajatam Saganaragnatam Pitam Tam Satvivam Sadvaitam Savaduktam Parjana Saitam Chikrishnatstanya Devam Shirada Krishna Padan Saganalita Shipshakam Pitam Sa Hey Krishna Karuna Sundardina Bandhachyat Pati Gopesha Gopkakanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kansna Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanashve Vishabhana Sutta Devi Pranamama Haripriya Pankha Kalpa Visha Kripa Sangha Visha Patanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasa Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupada Krishna Vastai Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pacharani Nirvashesha Srinyavadi Paskachari Pasatani. So we heard the sages of Namisaranya. They asked Sutta Goswami in the first chapter of the Bhagavatam. We heard they asked 6 questions. And their first question was the Shreya Uttama. What is the ultimate good? And the answer on this we have heard in the previous verse. Savaipna Saparudamo Yato Bhaktiadaksya Haitapatiyata Yatma Supasidati. The highest occupation for human beings is the paradharma, is devotional service. But to count as devotional service, pure devotional service, it must have 2 qualities. Ahaitik apatiyata. It must be without interruption and without material motive, just to please the Supreme Lord. And that gives satisfaction to the heart. So that's the ultimate good. Now, this question, 127 answers why. Why? So, if you perform this devotional service, it will, one will develop, one will get a proper result. And that result is described here as knowledge and attachment. So we know in Bhagavad Gita 9.2, we hear about Raja Vidya, that the 9th chapter gives the most confidential knowledge because it explains spiritual activities that so in the 11th chapter we have heard that 1153 that the Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, to get darshan of this transcendental form of mind cannot be attained. This devotional service cannot be attained by vratas, by austerities, by study of the Vedas, and so on. In 1154, he writes it, yes, only Ananya Bhakti can lead to understanding me as I'm standing before you. Srila Prabhupada writes in a purport, one cannot even start understanding Krishna if one does not take sort of a bona fide spiritual master. And that, of course, we have also Bhagavad Gita in the 5th chapter, and that's very applicable to what we are, to this verse of today. Krishna says to Arjuna, Sankhya Yoga Pritakpala Pradavant Napandita Ekamapyasitasiyat Ubhayavindate Phalam. And so Krishna says only the ignorant speak of devotional service and Sankhya and analytical study, the study of the jnanis, that the only ignorant thing that's different. But one who is actually learns, he applies himself to one of these paths, achieves the result of both. What does it mean? It means that simple thing. If one becomes attached to Krishna, one becomes detached from this material world. Because the jnanis, they want to detach from the spiritual, detach from this material world. And by artificial renunciation, it's very difficult. But the devotee, without effort, by becoming attached to Krishna, becomes detached from this world. But how does this happen? So the stage of Namaskara question, this. So they want to know which part, purifies us most quickly, because we don't have much time. We have a short life in Kali Yuga and so on. What path is going to purify and destroy our ignorance? Which path is going to increase our jnana, our vairag? So the question brings also, how can Vaishnavas destroy Maya and Moha, illusion? We hear the holy name is like Chintamani, like a touchstone. So there are different levels here that kalpavrikshas can give heavily enjoyment, they say. But if the spiritual master is pleased, he can give Vaikuntha. So Shuddha Goswami will explain here that hearing and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam is the path. When Maharaj Pariksit went back to Godhead, then even Brahma was bewildered. Just how it is possible, Pariksit heard 7 days the Bhagavatam, and he went back to Godhead in 7 days. Great rishis, they perform austerities for many lifetimes, and they cannot make it. So Brahma went to the dam with a scale, and in his mind on the scale at one time he put Jnana, Tapasya, Jagya, Dham Seva, and on the other the Bhagavatam. And in his mind he was weighing the two sides, and he realized that the Bhagavatam was more heavy. So how is that? Shuddha Goswami realizes that the Srimad Bhagavatam was more glorious. When Maharaj Pariksit was about to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, the demigods came with a pot of nectar. They brought a nectar for Maharaj Pariksit and said, if you drink this, you will not die. And in return, let us hear the Bhagavatam, and you go back to your kingdom. But Sukadev Goswami said, you have come to purchase this Srimad Bhagavatam Katha. If you would have come quietly and sit down in the assembly, I would have allowed you to hear. But you brought this pot of nectar and you tried to equate it with the Srimad Bhagavatam. How can there be a comparison of yours between this nectar of yours and this transcendental nectar? So Sukadev Goswami said that to have these demigods out here, get them out, he said. They don't have the adhikari, they don't deserve. So this Srimad Bhagavatam Katha is durlabha, it's difficult to attain even for the demigods, because the demigods wanted to exchange it. They did not understand the value of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the demigods were thrown out of the assembly. So the value of this Bhagavatam cannot be compared to any other Amrita. But then Sukadev Goswami tells a story. He said once Narada Muni, this I think is from Padma Purana, once Narada Muni was wandering about this earth and he reached Hardwar in the Himalayas. And he went to Kurukshetra, to Namisaranya, he went to Benares, Kaya, Pulasta, Gangasagar, Jagannath Puri, and then he went to South India. And then he reached Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, he saw something very amazing. He saw a very beautiful young woman, and she was with two elderly men. These elderly men were looking just like dead persons on the verge of leaving their body. And the young woman was crying and looking in all four directions. There were a few ladies who were serving her. So Narada Muni was very amazed. So Narada Muni asked, why are you crying? What's the problem? Who are you? Who are these two elderly men? And who are these ladies serving you? And why are you crying? Why are you so sad? The young woman said, I'm Bhakti. I'm Lord Krishna's Bhakti Devi. And these two are my sons. And their name is Jnana and Vairagya. Knowledge and renunciation. So when one engages in bhakti, one gets automatically Jnana and Vairagya. So these are my sons, but because of the time factor, they have become so old. And these ladies, Adrivas, Ganga, etc., they are taking care of me. They are serving me. So Narada Muni thought, what is this? The mother is so young and the sons have become so old. The Bhakti Maharani, she tells her story. She tells her story to Narada Muni and said, Bhakti Devi said, she said, I was born in South India, in Karnataka, and I grew up in a youth. And in Maharashtra, in some places, I was much respected. For example, in Bprs. But when I came to Gujarat, I became very old. So Bhakti Maharani is saying to us, this herself here. Gujaratis are easily tricked and divided in different sects. I was 11 years in Leicester in the UK. And in Leicester, there are more than 20 Hindu temples, and the ISKCON temple is just one of these temples. And they are all devotional people, but they easily go to other groups, and they go to all these temples, not only to the ISKCON temple. So Bhakti Devi said, I went to Gujarat and I became old. So here we see that it's mostly Gujarati people who do bhakti, but they are also interested in other paths. Actually, Bhakti Maharani became old in Gujarat. One way or another, with my two sons, I wandered around until I reached Vrindavan. As soon as I reached Vrindavan, I became a fresh youth, but my two sons are still old. The influence of Vrajabhuma is devotion, but nobody cares there for knowledge and renunciation. They are actually engaged in bhakti. I'm very anxious because I've become young, but my two sons are so old. All great personalities are your disciples, he said to Narada Muni. Prahlad, Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and so on. Please help me. Please remove this suffering. Narada Muni said, don't worry. This is Kali Yuga. Actually, the whole world has become influenced by Kali Yuga. Even the sadhus have become corrupt. There's so much exploitation. All holy places have been taken over by mlechas, yavanas. But don't worry, I will find out some way. I will find out some way to make your sons also youthful. First, Narada Muni started to read the Vedas and the Vedantas, and nothing happened with the sons. Then he read the whole Bhagavad Gita. Then a tiny change came. But instead of looking like dead persons, they seemed like taking some breaths. So Narada Muni became worried. I'm working so hard, I spoke all the Vedas, the Vedantas, and nearly nothing happened. No Jnana and Vairagya are becoming healthy. Then there was a voice from the sky. Jnana and Vairagya will not become healthy in this way, the voice said. You have to do some sat karma for these two personalities. Otherwise, they will not become youthful or healthy. So sat karma means a process or an auspicious activity. And the voice said this sat karma should be performed by saintly persons. But they did not mention the names of these saintly persons. So Narada Muni said, he just wanted to persevere. I'm going to do something about this. And I do not spread your glories in every home. If I do not spread your glories in every home, then I will not be called a servant of Krishna. I will establish you in every home, in every person. So Narada Muni took an oath that he will preach bhakti, devotion to Krishna, in every home. So Narada Muni left to the Himalayas to see Bhagavan Narayan to ask, what is this Sat Karma? But on the way, Narada Muni met the 4 Kumaras. He was actually going to Badarikashram to see Narayan. Then he met the 4 Kumaras, his ancestors, his elder brothers, Lord Brahma's first sons. They were all brahmacharis, so they saw Narada Muni walking so fast and in great anxiety. So they stopped Narada Muni and said, Naradaji, you look like a householder. You are in so much anxiety. There's not a smile on your face. Householders are always busy, anxiety. The Kumara said, you are a sannyasi. You have no business in this material world. You are free, but where are you going? So Narada Muni was so much in anxiety that he didn't offer obeisance to his brothers, the 4 Kumaras. Then Narada Muni told the story of Bhakti Devi and her sons. I have to make her sons youthful again and install her in every home, So this is why I'm going to see the Lord. I did so much. I read Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita. Now what should I do? A voice from the sky said that I should do Satkarma. But what is the meaning of Satkarma? So I'm going to see the Lord and question him. So, and the voice said that this Satkarma should be performed by saintly persons. So who could be more saintly than you 4 brothers? Please explain me this Satkarma I have to do for Bhakti and her sons. After hearing this, the 4 Kumaras started laughing, saying, oh, how can you be so bewildered? How did you get covered by this ignorance? When Vyasadeva was bewildered, you told him to write the Bhagavad. You removed this disappointment. This Bhagavatam is Satkarma. So Narada Muni said, this Bhagavatam is the fruit of all Vedic literatures. I've spoken all the Vedas to Bhakti Devi. If through reciting the Vedic literature nothing happened to Jnana and Vairagya, what then can the Bhagavatam do? I've given already the whole tree to them. I didn't help. It didn't help. So what good the fruit will do? In the tree, from the root to the top, is the life juice of the tree. When all the juice is concentrated in the fruit, the essence of the tree is in the fruit. Then the taste of the fruit is different than chewing on the tree. Take some wood from the tree and you try to eat it. It has a different taste than when you take the fruit. Take, for example, sugarcane. Sugarcane, from the bottom to the top, is full of sweet juice. But when the juice is extracted and boiled, it has a different taste. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the Vedic literature. Please recite this to Jnana and Vairagya, and they will become youthful and healthy. In other words, they will have Jnana and Vairagya, and they will have Bhakti. So Narada Muni was now satisfied, and he said to the 4 Kumaras that now you will speak the Bhagavatam, and I will arrange for it, he said to the 4 Kumaras. So the 4 Kumaras spoke this Srimad Bhagavatam in Hartwar. So Narada Muni arranged for this katha, and the 4 Kumaras spoke it. So in the whole universe, the news spread that the 4 Kumaras were going to speak, and everyone gathered. Just like when Bhishmadev was speaking, all the great personalities, they gathered all over the universe. In the same way, the news had spread, and all the great rishis, the sadhus, the devotees, they arrived from all over the universe and from all over the world to come and hear this Bhagavatam. So when the four Kumars spoke, Narada Muni was the main person hearing. So after the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, this time by Narada Muni, he went to Vrindavan, recited the Bhagavatam in Vrindavan. In 7 days, this Jnana and Vairagya, these two sons of Bhakti, were transformed in youthful 16-year-old fresh youth. And Bhakti Dev was become very pleased. After 7 days, when the Srimad Bhagavatam was complete, the Supreme Lord appeared, and Bhakti Devi became more beautiful. And she was covered with beautiful clothes and wonderful jewelry. All who listened to Srimad Bhagavatam get knowledge and renunciation in their hearts, and they engage in devotional service. This is a story from the Padma Purana, but it shows that yes, this Jnana and this Vairagya, they became very old. That if bhakti flourishes, then real Jnana and knowledge develops. That the Srila Prabhupada said, yes, well, but what is this? This real renunciation? That Srila Prabhupada said, someone is in Vrindavan, and if he finds on the ground 1,000 rupee note. So he said there are three ways to deal with it. The Mayavadis, impersonalists, they don't have perfect knowledge. It's restricted to the knowledge that they are not his body. They are spiritual, but who they are, they don't know. So they think that the material world is illusion. So a Mayavadi finds the 1,000 rupee note and he says, I don't touch it. It's illusion. That, of course, the second way to deal with it is one finds the 1,000 rupee note and goes to the sweet shop and has a feast. These are the karmis. Let's enjoy it. But the devotee who has knowledge and renunciation will find, Srila Prabhupada said, when one finds the 1,000 rupee note, that he will go to the temple and put it in the donation box of Madan Mohan. And that's real renunciation. Real renunciation requires knowledge. Knowledge, not just that I'm not his body, but knowledge that everything belongs to Krishna. And therefore, we offer it to him for his enjoyment, because he's the proprietor of everything. And that, because many times people in this world completely forget. They go to the shop, they buy so many foodstuffs, and it comes from the factory. But food comes from the earth. By the mercy of Krishna, it shows in the earth that nobody can produce foodstuff, can transform it and mix it on so many things. But the real food comes from the earth. Therefore, everything comes from Krishna, from Bhagavan. And the devotee realizes that. And that Pakistan, the Saraswati, when Lord Chaitanya went to Kashi or Varanasi, Benares, so many names. The first time he went there, that he heard that all these Mayavadis were criticizing him. So he didn't bother about them. But then a few years later, he came back. And then he heard that they became more favorable and they stopped criticizing him and they invited him. So he went, and we know that it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's sitting at that place where, where one washes one's foot and was sitting there, feet and was sitting there. But he was as effulgent as Narayan. So Prakashananda Saraswati, the leader of this Mayavadis, he invited him to come in their midst, and he was shining like a sun, like Narayan. And Prakashananda Saraswati said, we don't understand you are such a young, effulgent person. Everyone can see that you got the mercy of the Supreme Lord. But how is it that you are chanting these holy names of Krishna as a sentimentalist? As sannyasi, you should study Vedanta to develop knowledge and renunciation. How is this? And yes, Lord Chaitanya said, when I went to my spiritual master, so Ishvarapuri in Gaya, my spiritual master said, you are a big fool. You are unqualified to study Vedanta, he said. You just chant his holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And I started to chant his holy names. And I became mad. I went back to my spiritual master. I said, what happens? That I feel this ecstasy and so on. And my spiritual master was very happy that, but then after that, Lord Chaitanya started to explain the real meaning of Vedanta. And all these Mayavadis were completely baffled. They were astonished and finally they were all converted into devotees. But yes, a bhakti produces jnana and renunciation. That in terms of realization, so that's important. Philosophy, studying philosophy alone will not help us. We have to bring it in practice. And that practice is devotional service. And then by this practice, we realize the real meaning of this jnana and renunciation. Then we will be able to give up the hard knot of attachment to this world. Because we get this paramdristvani vartate, this attachment to Krishna. So this attachment and renunciation in the Bhagavatam, by hearing the Bhagavatam, that's our most important practice, together with the chanting of the holy name. Because by hearing the Bhagavatam in the first 9 cantos, we hear about the creation, the temporary nature of this world. And we hear about that everyone in this world is submitted to this so-called happiness and distress, and nothing you can do about it. We realize this place is a place of misery, danger at every step. So by hearing the baritone, we realize that. And not the other, we become detached from the temporary. And Geldi, we create attachment for the eternal. And what's eternal is our eternal relationship with Krishna. Becoming absorbed in our relationship with Krishna. And everything what helps that is real knowledge. And this absorption to Krishna produces automatically renunciation. Nothing to worry about. But we must absorb ourselves. And that is the message here. Hearing this Bhagavatam. And we hear in the Bhagavatam that Narada Muni in his previous life, in 4 months, he attained liberation by hearing from the Bhaktivedantas. Maharaj speaks it in 7 days. He got the realization that so it's not, that is the result, as Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, of becoming attached to the positive form, that there are activities in spiritual life. And knowledge which does not explain these activities is incomplete. Without understanding our relationship with Krishna and learning to act in that relationship, one cannot become attached from inferior things. That, therefore, everything what helps to bhakti in our lives, we have to learn to accept. And everything what takes us away from bhakti, we must reject. That. So that, and then we are under the grace of the Lord, the mercy of the Lord. So if we become attached to Krishna, we become pure devotees, then this knowledge and detachment, that is just a byproduct. But one who tries to only develop knowledge and detachment, that's not the path. Such persons will fail. Because they miss the goal of life. The goal of life is factually to become attached to Krishna. Because that's attached to Krishna in devotional service. Because that is the parodharma. That's the natural activity from the spirit soul. We are not this body, we have heard many times. Because the soul becomes attached to this body, the body is very dear to us. That in whatever form of life, that if you have the body of a hog, we become very dear to the body is very dear to us, and we like to eat stool and so on. But by hearing the Bhagavatam, we transcend this bodily conception and become attached to Krishna. And that is realization of real knowledge, not just cultivation of attachment, but of attachment, detachment, and knowledge. So, this is what I could say on this verse. Any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. And nice topic, Maharaj, just before the Janmashtami. So thank you for picking up this for us. One question, Maharaj. In the story, what you have read from Padma Purana, it says Jnana and Vairagya were together. So, and you explained about how Jnana will lead to Vairagya, but in household consideration in today's life, like what would be the right definition of Vairagya? How we can understand the Vairagya in that context?
Yeah, that's a Vairagya for a householder means there's a big echo. And I don't know, we can avoid it, but yes, Vairagya, the dharma of a householder, one of the aspects of this is giving charity to others. But that charity for devotees should be done in the realm of devotional service, like distribution of prasad. You have the 6 loving exchanges in the Nectar of Instruction. Invite people to your home, to participate in kirtan, and to give them, to let them hear the Bhagavatam, and to give them prasad. That is, it is Vairagya. That Vairagya in the sense that, we give to others, nothing for ourselves. Trying to please Krishna and not to put ourselves in the center. So that's important. Never put ourselves in the center, put always Krishna's service in the center, and try to give Krishna consciousness to others. That is the best Vairagya. That's Vairagya in practice. That also in the education of our children, educate them in Krishna consciousness. Give them Krishna consciousness. It's a very important fact. Very important. That's the only thing we can give our children. That and by that you give them knowledge, and it's also an act of detachment. You give it for their benefit, not for your benefit. It's a devotional service to Krishna. So it's Krishna to dovetail everything in the service of Krishna. And that requires intelligence. And sometimes we may miss that intelligence, but we can pray to Lord Krishna to help us how to connect everything in our lives with Krishna. Of course, there may be personal, practical points and so on, how to do that. But it's good to have a mentor or a spiritual master who is close connected with you, whom you trust and who can give you advice in your particular situation, how to practice it. Because various situations are sometimes complicated in this world. But would you agree with that, Purnachandra? Do you agree with that?
Yes, Maharaj. And very good point about the kids education also. Right? Yeah,
Mhm.
that is very good for reminding us that we need to make sure that they get a Krishna conscious knowledge and education.
Mhm.
So Maharaj, any practical tips, Maharaj, um, uh, to connect them to Krishna consciousness practically, because sometimes the kids are more logical and they question more than why this, why we should do this way, why we shouldn't do that way. Many times we just force them, okay, just do it. But are there any like help or any literature where it can help us to connect them more um, organically?
Yeah, you mean in relation to children?
In yeah, give
Yeah.
the knowledge to children.
Yeah. I know in many temples, not in all, like in South London, I'm going to London. I leave for London tomorrow and go to South London, and there on Sunday I have always a talk with the children. So that it's good to have special programs for children on their level, and to make sure that they have association with other devotee children. That so that is an important aspect. Give attention to them, and that and have also special services that children can do on the Sunday feast or whatever. That like every year I'm going twice per year to Harinamadesh, that is in Wiesbaden. And like every Sunday morning, there's a morning program, and everything is done by the children in the morning program. They do the Tulsi Puja, they do Prabhupada Puja, and the class, the one who gives the class, he gives a class, special class for the children. To give attention for the children. That is from a temple side, that's important. From the parent side, it's important to organize, to connect with other families so that they can do with the children of the other families to get together Krishna conscious activities. That so these are just a few ideas, but yeah, it's a lifetime of finding ways how to do that in particular situation. It's not so simple mostly.
Yes, yes, Maharaj. Thank you. But these ideas are good. Yeah. And where, Maharaj, I couldn't get that. Where they do this the kids program? Where, in which country?
That was in Germany.
You made
Harinamadesh. Yeah.
In Germany, okay.
Yeah, and that's very nice.
Oh.
All the families are there, and the children are the center of the program. So to make the children feel appreciated, that's important. That they feel good, that they have a good experience. That because if they have bad experience, that may make them drift away from Krishna consciousness later. Very important to give them all affection. That Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, I have two questions. The story you said about Padma Puran.
Yeah.
Bhakti Devi with her children's.
Yeah.
Usually, I heard is that when Parikshit Maharaj, when Kali entered, so Parikshit Maharaj saw this situation. So here in this story, we see that Narad Muni saw seeing the Bhakti Devi with her two children. So how to understand is the situations both are same, but the personalities are different. One side is Parikshit Maharaj and one side is Narad Muni. So
Yeah,
it's-
but the that's true. That may be similar story. But important is the lesson that we learn from that.
okay, Maharaj.
It's just a way to get us understand
Mhm.
that, we should not deviate from the course of devotional service, and that it's so essential in our life to hear the Bhagavatam, not only chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and the chanting, the Bhagavatam is so important. I just remember Bhakti Charamai, and he got an order to translate the Bhagavatam into Bengali, and he did it in 10 years. And that made him great. That gave him all the realizations very clearly. Just by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, that so powerful. He did that in 10 years, but he got all realizations, and he knew all the details of the Bhagavatam, because he realized them just by doing it. And therefore it's also so important for us that because we thought we need knowledge also, and this knowledge is in the Bhagavatam. And that helps knowledge of devotional service. And this knowledge of devotional service, when brought in practice, produces this real knowledge and renunciation. And that's really the point here. Does that help, Mother Prema?
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, I have one more question. In the arena of Naimisharanyas, when they spoke, Sutta Goswami, all the rishis, they asked Sutta Goswami to narrate the story of Bhagavatam. We see that Shaunaka Rishi is the head of all the rishis, but why they ask Sutta Goswami instead of Shaunaka Rishi to narrate Srimad Bhagavatam?
Well, the reason for that is that when Roma Marston was killed by Balaram because he was disrespectful, the sages said, "Yeah, you have killed him, Lord Balaram. You are the supreme Lord, and we can only approve it, but we have blessed him with a long life. He was going to speak the Bhagavatam because he knew all the Puranas. He had a long life, and we blessed him with a long life. He studied all the Puranas. So he lived hundreds of years, and he knew all the Puranas. Very rare that someone knew all the Puranas. That there were only a few. Markandeya Rishi, he got the blessings to live 7 days of Brahma. He knew also all the Puranas. And I got this blessing from Lord Shiva. But it's very rare. But they said yes. But then Lord Balaram said yes. Also his son. you let speak his son, because his son has also studied all the Puranas, and he knows the essence, devotional service. So they put Sutta Goswami on the throne, because he was a representative of his father, Romar's son, Sutta. So, by the mercy of Balaram, the blessings the sages gave to Romar's Sutta were transferred to Sutta Goswami. And then Sutta Goswami spoke, but Sutta Goswami was more qualified than his father. Because he was one of the sages who was sitting and listening from Sukadev Goswami while Maharaj Pariksit was there. So he heard the whole conversation and he repeated the Bhagavatam. So he's in the disciplic succession from Sukadev Goswami. And therefore, he was qualified. He had all the qualifications of a speaker of the Bhagavatam. And these qualifications are explained in the beginning of the first canto. So does that help, Mother Prema?
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah, it was very helpful. So when Parikshit Maharaj, when Shukadev Goswami was narrating the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, that time Shaunak Rishi was not there in that.
He may also have been there.
Oh, okay.
But Shaunak Rishi, he was like the master of all the sages. And he was the one who was going to ask the questions on behalf of the sages. And they needed a very qualified one, because there were 80,000 sages. 80,000, that's a big, we cannot imagine how they did it. But he was speaking on their behalf. And he was chosen. So they needed a very qualified person also for that. So it was Krishna's arrangement to get them combined. It could be very clear now. Yeah. And whether Shaunak Rishi was there when Sukadev Goswami was speaking, I never heard that. But it could be. Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much. I will wish you all a happy Janmashtami on Friday, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward next week, Wednesday, to continue.
Yes, ma'am.
Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Happy Janmashtami. You also. Happy Janmashtami.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.